Hi, my name is Erica from FiveLittleMonsters.com, and today I just wanted to really quickly do a little video to show how to make this little pumpkin. This is super easy to crochet. It is made with actually a rectangle, so there's not really any shaping involved. I have another crochet pattern for a pumpkin similar in size to this on my blog, and it's made by single crocheting a pumpkin shape, so you have to increase and decrease. This one, there's no increases and decreases. It's super simple, so I thought I'd just really quickly make a little video to show how to make it. So first, you're going to need to gather supplies. All you're going to need is some yarn. This is the yarn that I used. Really you could use any yarn for this. To end up with this size, you're going to want a worsted weight yarn similar to this, a number 4 weight. You could use something like Red Heart Super Saver, Vanna's Choice would work. Lots of different yarns that are in that weight category. Any of them would work. But this just happened to be the orange that I had that was the color that I wanted. You're going to need a G crochet hook. I like these ones, but any G crochet hook will work. Also, if you wanted to use a different size yarn, if you use like a chunky yarn or something, this pattern would still work just fine. It would just be bigger or smaller because of the yarn choice that you made. And you'd probably need to go with a bigger or smaller hook as well. You're going to need some scissors, a yarn needle, some stuffing, and you're going to need a little stick that you're going to use as your stem. Okay, so I'm going to move all of this extra stuff out of my way for right now. All I really need to get started is my yarn and my crochet hook. So the first thing you're going to want to do is I'm going to leave kind of a long end before I start. And I'm going to use that later as I'm stitching my pumpkin together. So it'll just be, if you don't leave a long end, you can just cut a piece of yarn at the end, but this just makes it really easy. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to chain 22 for this size of pumpkin. This is another thing. This pumpkin's super customizable as far as the size. If you wanted a taller pumpkin, start with a longer chain in the beginning. If you want a shorter pumpkin, start with a shorter chain in the beginning. If you want your pumpkin to be fatter, make more rows. If you want your pumpkin to be skinnier, make fewer rows. But we're going to do 20 stitches along the side. I'll show you. So we're going to start with 22 chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, and then 2 for turning, so total of 22. So that's going to be our starting chain. So I'm going to be doing half double crochets, so I skip the first 2, and I don't count it as a chain or as a stitch in this particular project. I just turn, I just do it as a turning chain. So I just skip those first 2 chains, and then I work a half double crochet in the 3rd chain from the hook. And then in each chain all the way down to the end, I'm just going to do a half double crochet. So that will give me a total of 20 half double crochets. So just keep working half double crochets until you get to the end of your chain. Okay, so here we have our first row done. We've got 20 half double crochets. So I'm going to chain 2 to turn, and then the next row is going to be exactly the same from this point on. So here you can see your top of your half double crochets. We're going to work in the back loop only, which means instead of like you would normally do working through both of those loops, you're only going to go through this back loop, and that's going to give us a ribbed texture. So I'm going to work a half double crochet in the back loop of each of these stitches across this row. So just only go through that back loop on all of them, and you can see it almost kind of bends the stitches backwards a little bit, and it gives you a sort of bump there, and that's going to give us the texture on our pumpkin. So just go all the way to the end of the row. Okay, so that's my second row done, 20 half double crochets worked in the back loop only. So now what you're going to do is you're going to chain 2 to turn again, turn your work, and once again you're going to work across here, working half double crochets in the back loop only. So you can see the texture kind of starting, and it kind of creates this sort of like almost zigzaggy sort of texture to your fabric. So work all the way to the end, just doing the same thing, half double crochet in the back loop only. And you are going to do this for the rest of your pumpkin. Like, this is how you make the body of the pumpkin, is just working rows of half double crochet in the back loop only until you have a rectangle that is the size that you want, which basically I'm going to work 25 rows. That's what I did for my sample pumpkin, and I'm just going to do this one the exact same way. But if you wanted your pumpkin to be a little bit fatter or a little bit skinnier, you could do fewer or more rows. And I will show you how that works as I get to the point where I have my finished rectangle and you see the assembly of it. Okay, so chain 2, turn, half double crochet, back loop only. Just keep this going until you have the number of rows you want. Like I said, for mine, I did 25 rows. So now I have 24 rows of half double crochet worked in the back loop only. So I'm on my very last row. So same thing as I've done all along, just chain 2 and work that last row of half double crochet. And then I will have the main portion of my pumpkin complete, and then it's just a matter of stitching it up and assembling it. So like I said, this is a super easy pattern because this is all there is to it, just rows of half double crochet. No shaping, no anything, just a little bit of seaming. Okay, so now I have 25 rows almost completed. So now I'm going to show what I meant when I said if you want to make your pumpkin bigger around, then you'll just continue making more rows, because this is your pumpkin is going to be made by stitching this together. So you're going to start by making kind of this tube shape by seaming it, and that's your pumpkin. And then we're going to close off the top and the bottom. So if you wanted to make it bigger, you could continue with the rows. In order to use the tails the way that I have, you'll want to do an odd number of rows so that they end up on the right sides. However, you can make it work even if you don't. But I'm going to cut this yarn, and I'm going to leave a long tail on this end as well. Okay, so I'm just going to pull this through here to finish it off. Okay, so that's my pumpkin. Now all I need to do is I'm going to take my yarn needle and I'm going to thread it. I thread this tail on my needle. Okay, and then you're going to fold your two ends together and you are going to stitch those ends. So you should have the same number of stitches, so it should be pretty simple. Just kind of whip stitch it through each stitch. And you'll see both of my tails ended up on the same side, but they're actually going to end up on opposite sides once I'm done with this. So that's why the odd number works well. It doesn't really matter how you stitch this together. I wanted to leave kind of a ridge there just so it sort of looks similar. So I'm going through just one side of the stitch on this side and then both sides on this side. But it doesn't really matter which way you do it. You could go through both loops or on each side or one loop on each side, and it's fine. Okay, so now I have this tube shape. So the next step is we're going to make the bottom of the pumpkin. So just, it doesn't, there's not like a specific top or bottom, but I'm going to make this side my bottom because that's the side that my yarn is on right now that I'm working with. So you're just going to go back and forth through the top edge of this side here and pull your yarn through, just basically like a running stitch. And just keep going around until you get back to the beginning where you started. Okay, and then when you pull on this, it will just cinch that closed. and it doesn't necessarily want to close up like super tight, but what I usually do, this bottom piece you do want to be closed up tight. So what I did is just take my yarn and just kind of stitch through across to the other side and just pull on that. And then going the other way, kind of like top to bottom sort of, also go through from one side to the other. And then once you've done that and it's pulled as tight as you want it to be, I just secure it by kind of making a couple of stitches. Oops. Trying not to catch your other yarn, but just making a couple stitches in place. And then once you feel like it's nice and secure, you could cut your yarn, but since we're going to be, I did it on the inside so that I can just pull my needle off, and I'm going to be stuffing in there anyway, so I'm just going to leave the tail in there and it will be totally fine. Okay, so this is the shape you end up with now, kind of this sort of bowl shape where one end's closed up, that's your bottom, and then your top is still open. So because I left this long tail at the beginning, I now have a piece of yarn that's ready to go. If I did not have this, if I forgot to leave a long tail, or if my tails ended up on the wrong side so that this one was down here, I would just cut a new piece of yarn for this part. But the tails work out nicely if you can use them. So I'm just going to thread my needle, and I'm going to do the exact same thing around the top edge. Just go back and forth through the stitches along the very top edge. Just sort of a running stitch along there. Until once again you get back to where you started. And I'm there. Okay, before you cinch it though, you're going to want to grab your stuffing and you're going to want to stuff your pumpkin. You don't want to stuff it so it's like super tight and overfilled, because you are going to scrunch it down, but you also want it to look full and not look like there's chunks that don't have stuffing. So you'll probably use more than you think you would, but you don't need to stuff it super tight. So once you feel like you feel pretty good about the amount of stuffing in there, you can start to scrunch it up. Just pull on that piece. If you feel like you need a little bit more stuffing, just do it before it gets too tight, although you can loosen it. So then just cinch it up. And now this one is a little bit different than the bottom because you don't want this hole to be completely closed. You want to leave a small opening because you're going to take your stick and you're going to stuff it down in there. Now you can like glue it in place or something. I just stuck mine in place, and you can just kind of cinch it up around it so that it's in the place that you want it to be. And once it is nice and tight around there, you can take and just kind of make a stitch to secure it so that it doesn't loosen up on you. And then this, you could just leave it like this, but what I like to do, I don't like how round it is because I feel like pumpkins aren't that round. So I am going to take my needle, and if your pumpkin was any taller than this, you'd probably need to use a longer needle, like a doll making needle or something, but I'm going to stick my needle down and push it down through the bottom. And then I'm going to go across and I'm going to go up and do the same thing. And then I'm kind of going to pull it, and it pulls down that center. So it kind of pulls the bottom and the top a little bit closer to each other so that it's not quite so round. And I just like the look of that better. So then once you've done that, then you're ready to just finish off your pumpkin. So I'm going to go down to the bottom. You can finish it off along the top, just secure your yarn. I'm going to go down one more time and just again take a couple little stitches to kind of knot it off a little bit. And then I'm just going to stick my needle in, pull it out somewhere. Pull it tight against there and carefully not cutting the pumpkin, but cut my yarn, and then the yarn will just go inside. So, and there you've got your little pumpkin. Now you can leave it like this, or if you want to add a little touch of green, you can just take a little scrap of green yarn and tie it onto the stem of your pumpkin. And trim. And that just adds a little touch of green to your little pumpkin, but you can also just leave it plain. Either way is cute. And just like that, you've got a little crocheted pumpkin. Super easy to make. All you need to be able to do is make a rectangle. The written pattern for these pumpkins is available on my blog, 5littlemonsters.com, as well as a lot of other free crochet patterns. So go check that out, and hopefully you enjoyed this pattern. Thanks for watching.